podcasting, the latest frontier. These are the episodes of a Catch as Catch Can podcast. Its continuing mission: to explore strange, nerdy topics, to chat about sports, movies, sci-fi, and so much more. To boldly pod where this nerd has gone before. Captain's log, pod date 0428.19. On this episode of To Boldly Pod, with this weekend being a big, giant comic book superhero movie weekend, I'm joined by Sandshoes and my buddy Dave, and we're going to have a little conversation about DC and Marvel and superhero movies and comic books. Also, we're going to pay tribute to one of the greatest icons of the paranormal field who passed away this week, Lorraine Warren. And we have a fun little To Boldly Pod question to sort of usher in our second anniversary on Spock Rock Radio. And we close shop with a fun little headline and article we found on the internet. So, Scotty, set phasers on stun, engage. Let's talk about superheroes, because I am such an expert in superheroes. Right. I am actually totally not an expert in superheroes, and I will be the first one to admit that I was not a big comic book reader growing up, and most of my, if not all of my, matter of fact, all of my knowledge of superheroes stems from the 1970s cartoons, TV shows, and movies. So I'm going to elicit some help from other people to discuss comic book movies. And why do we want to talk about that? It just seems the last 15 or 20 years that comic book movies have really become prevalent in Hollywood, and they just announced that the 70s TV show Shazam is getting an HD rework, and there's a Shazam movie coming out in 2019. So I'm wondering if it's jumping the shark, to use a term, or is it just a steady influx of entertainment that people just continue to love. So let's go back to what I do know. As I stated, most of my knowledge comes from the 1970s. First and foremost, the Super Friends cartoon, which I loved back then, and I love now because I went out and bought it and still watch it to this day. And it also came from Shazam and Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk, and to a lesser extent, but still in the 70s, the 60s Batman TV series that got reran in the 70s, and I watched over and over again. So that's where my love of superheroes and comic books came from, and that's really the only point of where my knowledge is, other than this current stem of movies. So, as I stated, I'm going to have some people come on here and give me their 2 cents about comic books and whatnot. But let me just put it out there and why I even wanted to talk about it. Are we getting so many superhero movies because we're in love with the genre, or is it just cheap entertainment? And I'm comparing this to what I think about why sci-fi is so big and important to so many people. And is it because comic books and superheroes are much like sci-fi in the aspect that we enjoy seeing good triumph over evil? Is it because we like looking to the future and seeing a more utopian life for everybody? Is it just something that we all strive to be? I don't know. Those are the questions I am posing, and hopefully we get some good answers to all of that, because my knowledge is visual, is cursory. I didn't read and don't know too much of the backstories to any superhero, so that's why I have friends that are much smarter than I am. What I will say is I have my knowledge of DC, as I mentioned, from the 70s, because that seemed to be a DC decade. That was the majority of the things you saw on TV and cartoons and movies were all DC. Superman, Wonder Woman, Super Friends, Batman, Shazam, etc., etc., etc. You didn't get a whole lot of Marvel that I recall. If that was there, I don't remember it. And that doesn't mean that I prefer DC to Marvel, because I really have no bull in the ring when it comes to choosing. I like portions of both sides. So again, that's why I have smarter friends than I am to come on here and give you deep background, deep knowledge of superheroes. And as promised, I am joined, well, not technically joined, but my partner from Nerding Out with Sandshoes and Granddad, Sandshoes, who is much more knowledgeable than I about superheroes, recorded a bit that he would like to share. Sandshoes, take it away.
I am really excited to be on the show today. Thanks, Cap Dan. I appreciate you giving me just a couple minutes to let you guys know what I think about all these new superhero movies coming out. Now, I know the topic was comic books. I never really read comic books. I read Spawn, which, I thought the movie for Spawn was great. And they're remaking it, so awesome. But I really like superhero movies. There's something about just how inspiring they are. Usually it is a downtrodden, nobody that gets some kind of power and becomes superhuman and becomes a hero. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody at some point in their life wants to be the hero. My favorite superhero, Batman. And I think it's simply because he's like this normal guy. I mean, as normal as a millionaire could be. A normal guy who has no superpowers, yet he can defeat the greatest of evils just using his brain and his muscles. Anyone could be Batman with enough money. Now, do I ever see this trend of superhero movies coming to an end? Absolutely. At some point, they're going to oversaturate the market and people are going to get tired of it. Just like anything. People will get tired of superhero movies. I don't see that coming for a while, because right now we're ramping up to the Avengers Endgame. We have the next Wonder Woman movie coming out. Spider-Man is huge right now. And even Aquaman, like the one Justice League member that nobody ever talked about, Aquaman, is huge right now. So I don't see this whole trend of superhero movies coming to an end anytime soon. I know I'm excited to see what comes up next. And I really, really, really hope that with this whole new DC reboot that they're doing, that they really do Batman and the Justice League some justice, so to speak. Anyways, thanks for giving me these last 2 minutes, Cap Dan. Back to you.
Okay, as promised, I'm joined by my buddy Dave, who joined us a few weeks ago to discuss a plethora of things and give us 5 minutes of stand-up at the end of the talk. And he's going to share his wisdom about the comic book movie phenomenon and comic books in general, because he is much more knowledgeable than I am. Now, Dave, as you know, I grew up mainly with 70s DC cartoons and Saturday morning shows and whatnot. So what is it about Marvel now that's so big and DC seems to be shoved to the back?
Well, they have their stuff more together, I guess. They actually had a better plan of how to put their universe together, in my opinion. I wanted so much to like the DC universe, and it's been disappointment after disappointment, at least to me. Ben Affleck actually made a good Batman, better than I thought he was going to be, but he's already aged out, basically, and they didn't do a proper origin story or anything, in my opinion. The DC movie that I've been most pleased with is the one that I did not see myself liking at all, was Wonder Woman. I thought that was fantastic. But DC is just, in my opinion, they're just all over the place. From the Suicide Squad movie, which should have been just fantastic and off the charts, is just, I don't know. It's just a mess to me.
There was one good thing about Suicide Squad, but I think we both agree on that.
There was a couple good things.
Yeah?
At least 3 good things. And I have not, full disclosure, I have not sat down, or I did not go to see Aquaman yet. And I have not seen the other movie, which I will not call Shazam, because he is actually Captain Marvel.
Hey.
And that's a whole legal thing.
Right.
But I refuse to call him Shazam. He is Captain Marvel. I don't care if Marvel has their own Captain Marvel. Billy Batson is Captain Marvel.
Did you ever watch the 70s Shazam show?
Yes.
Because I remember loving that as a kid.
Well, that's a whole... God, the legal reasons for Shazam / Captain Marvel is just fascinating. We won't even go into it now, but how DC sued way back in the 40s and won in the 50s, and Fawcett Comics closed it down, then DC bought it in the 70s, but they couldn't use the name Captain Marvel on the covers because Stan Lee saw the opportunity and slapped Captain Marvel on his books, a different character. That's why they had to start calling him Shazam, and they were still calling him Captain Marvel inside the books from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, but DC just kind of threw their hands up at the whole thing and just cut out the Captain Marvel moniker totally. But he's still Captain Marvel to me.
Fair enough. Like I said, I grew up to all the DC stuff, so I didn't read comics that much unless it had Star Trek or Star Wars on it. So I've been learning most of the Marvel stuff in the last 20 years, probably starting with, I don't know, whatever the hell the first one was, whether it was it the Fantastic Four? No, that wasn't first, was it?
The movies?
Right.
Well, the X-Men stuff came out in,
right,
I want to say 99 or 2000.
That's probably
technically what you're saying is yes, because there was a really bad Fantastic Four movie that came out in 94 or 95 that was made just to keep the rights of it.
Right.
And it's really bad. It's really comical, but from what I remember, Fox really kicked it back off, kicked the whole thing off with the X-Men stuff, and Sony did the Spider-Man movies, the Sam Raimi trilogy.
Right.
And that's and then there was a couple oddball ones like Blade, the Vampire Hunter.
Right.
Which were pretty decent.
So before I ask the next question, is there a favorite out of all of these the last 20 years that you enjoy the most?
Favorite movie?
Right.
I would say Captain America: Winter Soldier, and the first Avengers movie I really liked, and I did enjoy the Avengers movie that not the one that's, because I haven't seen Endgame yet, of course, but the one right before that was a good one. There's a few plot holes, but it was a good one. It's going back to 70s cartoons. As you know, I that was kind of my okay. I was brought home Marvel comics. People brought me Marvel comics as a little kid, starting at 4 or 5 years old. Okay, my first dive into the DC universe, and I enjoy them now, but it kind of painted a different picture for me. My first dive in the DC universe was the 60s live-action Batman,
right,
and the Super Friends. Both not as serious as what I was seeing in the Marvel comics. So it kind of jaded me a little bit to DC, even though I do like the Super Friends and the 60s Batman now, but just at the time, the Marvel stuff that I was getting was a lot more serious.
So
I don't know.
Your Scott Baio fascination goes hand in hand with Marvin from the Super Friends?
Well, and speaking of which, about the discussion we were having earlier, I think Baio, to go on your theory, I think Baio could have pulled it off, but I still think Macchio was the correct choice.
Fair enough.
I think Baio could have pulled it off, but I mean Macchio was the guy.
Baio can pull anything off. So
but, yeah, go ahead.
The last question is simple, and I asked Sandshoes this too. Do you think all the movies, because what are they saying? There's been 21 movies or 20 movies leading up to Endgame. Do you think people are getting... Is it jumping the shark? Are people getting tired of it, or are they still eating it up?
I find myself, I can't answer for everybody else, I find myself, and I didn't think I would get this way, but I am getting a little worn out. There's so much stuff to try to watch, from the Netflix series to there's stuff on Hulu, there's stuff on ABC, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Runaways and all this stuff, and the more mature Netflix stuff. And I didn't think I would get this way, but I do find myself falling behind on stuff and not really making a solid effort to get caught up too hard. So maybe I am getting a little burned out on it. But when I got on the internet today to see what Endgame's doing, and Endgame's is doing crazy numbers already overseas. So, you know, they're people are still going to see them. So, I just hope it's good.
I'm sure it is. So, any final things you want to say before I spring on what I'm going to have you talk about next?
Well, okay, just a little plug, just as my opinion. If anybody's interested, check out the CW's stuff, that what they call the Arrowverse, with the Green Arrow character, the Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. I really enjoy that stuff for DC. Supergirl technically is supposed to be part of it also, but I honestly only watch Supergirl when she's getting ready to cross over into the other shows. I don't watch. That's the one that I don't watch all the time. But Arrow, Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow, in my opinion, is worth the go if you want to. If you're interested in the genre.
And when is your book, How to Properly Display Saved by the Bell GIFs, coming out?
In July.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, you went on a stand-up routine last time, so I figured I'd get one line in. Well, thanks, Dave. I appreciate your time and effort. Any last words you want to say?
I enjoy doing this stuff. You said you needed a little bit of help with it, and I call you my friend, and you know what a friend in need is.
So, he's a pest.
A pest, yes.
All righty, well, I'll wrap this up, and whenever I need you again, which will probably be next week, I'll let you know.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dan.
And thanks to Sandshoes and Dave for their takes on superheroes and comic books and comic book movies. As you can plainly see, they are head and shoulders above me when it comes to knowledge of that topic. I'm a fan, but I'm not real versed on it. So they're the master, and I am but the learner. Nowadays, we are so influxed with paranormal shows on TV and paranormal movies and books and web series and YouTube channels and whatever. And we forget where everything sort of started. The first megastars of the paranormal, and that was Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I bring that up because this past week, Lorraine passed away. Now, Ed passed away quite a few years ago, but they were sort of the first big superstars of the paranormal, even back before everything was called the paranormal. They were on the case, if you will. And most people know them from, the Conjuring movies, and sort of paranormal historians or buffs will know they were the couple that originally investigated the Amityville horror case. And I want to take this opportunity to say a little something about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Their work and their TV specials and their books and whatnot were sort of paramount in crafting my intrigue into the paranormal. My experiences aside, which kind of cemented my interest in the phenomenon, but it was my experiences in league with the shows and movies and books of folks like Ed and Lorraine Warren that really made me seek out and study and experience the paranormal, want to understand the paranormal. So, and today's influx of everything you see is so misguided and convoluted and produced for TV that you really don't know what is what. And I'm not going to get into the whole debate on real, not real. Right now, that's going to come a little farther down the road on this podcast. But I'll just say that never did I doubt Ed and Lorraine's sincerity, their belief, their honesty in researching and investigating the paranormal, nor did I doubt their validity of any of their findings or their sincerity of what they thought they found and experienced. So, condolences to the Warren family for your loss. It's a huge loss for not only you, but all of us in the paranormal field. And I'll just close with, rest in peace, Lorraine. Rest easy. Worry not. We'll take it from here. Now, you all know that in conjunction with this podcast, I run and operate and host music shows on an online radio station called Spock Rock Radio. And this weekend happens to be our second anniversary on the air. Now, this podcast is a little older than that because of a previous radio life that I had. And I've kind of brought Too Boldly Pod into the Spock Rock Radio fold, playing these podcasts on Sunday mornings and Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, depending on where the hell it is you live. But I thought for this week's Too Boldly Pod question, we would ask something musical to sort of join in on the anniversary celebration fun. So it's a simple question I asked the people. My first concert was fill in the blank. And I got a lot of great responses from people. And we'll go through and give you all the answers. First off, my friend Narek, her first concert was Depeche Mode. Kate's first concert was Barry Manilow. Kimber answered Alice in Chains in 1991. Noted author Paul Canellis replied, Diamond David Lee Roth. I was a teen, worked for the money, and took my dad and a bunch of my friends to see him. Jenny replied Babyface, Tevin Campbell, and Boys to Men. Sandshoes replied Poison and Warrant. I think I was in the 5th grade. Still one of the best shows I've ever seen. Shirley replied the Beach Boys. Jody also replied the Beach Boys at Pine Knob. Kyle replied Herman's Hermits. Tom replied Kiss, Faster Pussycats, and Slaughter. Man, am I old. Rick replied Prick, 9 Inch Nails, and David Bowie. Kelly replied New Kids on the Block. No lie. And then I replied, oh, Kelly? Get it? Yeah, I'm funny. No, I'm not. Jeff replied Black Flag. Mark replied Linda Ronstadt with special guest Quarter Flash at Pine Knob Music Theater. Kathy replied Motley Crue. Charles maybe has the most interesting one of all. He replied Anaheim Stadium, U2, Public Enemy, and the Sugar Cubes. Oddest lineup I've ever heard of. Got to give you that one, Charles. Andrea replied John Denver. Mark replied Boston in 1987. Mike replied John Michael Montgomery. Marty replied Nazareth at the IMA in Flint. Matt replied Guns N' Roses. Sarah replied Tina Turner. And Danny replied Bob Seger. Now, as for my very first concert, do I really need to tell you all what it was? Thank you all for those of you that took time to answer this and help us join in our 2-year anniversary celebration on Spock Rock Radio. And our news article that makes us scratch our head, as I literally scratch my head right now, comes from the Epoch Times, and the headline is, Giant Idaho Potato Turned into an Airbnb for $200 per night. A giant fake potato that went on tour for the past several years has been turned into a home that a person can rent on Airbnb. The 6-ton prop potato was dubbed the Big Idaho Potato Hotel, according to the Idaho Statesman, which reported that it traveled on the back of a semi-truck to promote Idaho potatoes. Christy Wolf, a tiny house developer, suggested that it should be turned into a real home after state officials could not figure out what to do with the massive spud. What the hell is wrong with mankind? And that's going to wrap up this episode of Too Boldly Pod. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sandshoes and Dave about superhero movies and comic books and DC and Marvel. Thanks to both of them for joining me on this show. I also hope you enjoyed our little tribute to Lorraine Warren with her unfortunate passing this past week. And I hope you enjoyed our Too Boldly Pod question about what was your very first concert. And I hope our little story we read about the Airbnb potato also made you go, the hell is wrong with mankind? As usual, I have no closer for this show, so I'll just say, we're all stories in the end. Just make it a good one, eh? Talk to all of you next time.
WLLP Spock Rock Radio.